Welcome to the latest installment of Frank Talk with Gilbert. My name is Bob McLean. I'm with DebtMasters, and I have the honor of being your moderator here and the MC for the show. And of course, the big star of the show is the founder and CEO of DebtMasters. That's Gilbert Landriault. Gilbert, how are you doing today?
Thank you, Bob. I'm doing very well, and I'm excited to be here and be able to answer all your questions.
Okay, fantastic, because we got a good episode today. It's really, really important because I think a lot of people who are in debt, they're a little trouble, they're behind on their debt, and by a little or a lot, they feel that the only option they have is to go bankrupt. And that is not true, is it?
No, it's not. Bankruptcy is always the last resort. We always start by doing an analysis of their finance. And we look at mostly a consumer proposal, which would mean that they have the option of not damaging their credit too much by using that option. And later we'll get on in more detail what that can do for you. And if a consumer proposal is not the option, then we have what is called a debt arbitration program, which is not as damageable as a consumer proposal, because the difference between a consumer proposal and a debt arbitration program is a proposal you must include all your debt, compared to a debt arbitrator, you just use the debt that's in trouble. That's the difference between both. Compared to also a bankruptcy, you must put everything in your bankruptcy, and you have no choice.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is that there's a range of solutions that perhaps go from a little bit of help and a little bit of risk up to a ton of help, but something that's really going to cause you credit problems in the end. Is that kind of it? It's kind of a trade-off between the credit problems you're going to create and the help that you get. Is that true?
Definitely. What happens with these options is they all depend on where you stand with your financial situation regarding your credit cards, if you're in a collection or have court judgment. But at the end of the day, that determines which option will qualify you to go forward with. It doesn't mean that I want to go bankrupt. You can go bankrupt. It depends on all your lifestyle and everything else that follows with it at the end of the day.
So I guess that's something that it's good for us to just bring up here right now, is that we're talking about all of the options that are available to take a look at. But for each individual person, various options may or may not work for them. Is that?
That's correct. You could take two people, similar lifestyle, but one has a house and the other one doesn't, and their option would be totally different from one to the other.
Okay. So can you put them in order for me? The ones that are perhaps the smallest amount of help, but also the smallest hit on your credit, all the way up to the top end. What would be the order of things that are possible?
The order that we put them in, usually we start with seeing if we can put them in a consumer proposal. And that gives them options of having a monthly plan for a certain term, and it doesn't damage their credit as much compared to a bankruptcy. A bankruptcy will create a big drop in their credit score, and it will stay on their report for 7 years, if not 10 almost. And that's for a first-time bankruptcy. A second time is 14 years. So you know that it really damages your credit score, and the chance of getting good loans with interest, that makes sense at the end of the day.
Wow. Okay, so so we've talked about proposal, we've talked about bankruptcy. There's also a couple more options in there: consolidation and arbitration. What are those?
Debt arbitration is something that a client will have one debt that will be very high. He will be owing something like 30,000, 40,000, and that's the only debt he needs to negotiate. So he doesn't have to. Compared to a consumer proposal, you have to include all your debt, even if one's not in trouble and you lose your credit cards. Compared to a debt arbitration, you can negotiate that debt only. And it's done on a term. It can take 3 to 4 to 6 months to get it done, because you're not protected by law compared to a consumer proposal. So it takes longer to finalize the the agreement with the creditors. Compared to a debt consolidation, the debt consolidation, again, you don't have to include of your debt, but you are still at the position and the mercy of the creditors that they can or cannot accept it, compared to an arbitration part at the end of the day. It gets very complex depending how many of their debt that are in trouble at the end of the day. If you have only one, it's easier to do a debt arbitration. If you have more than one or three, it's a debt consolidation. So it varies again of the situation, financial situation of the time.
I see. Okay. So I've got one credit card that's wildly, I've got a huge balance on it, or I've bought something along the way for business or personal use, and I've got a great big loan out on that item. From an arbitration point of view, I can work with somebody like you and have talk to the creditor, whoever that is, and see if we can't negotiate a reduction of the debt, just that one.
That definitely, and that arbitration term is between 5 to 15 days for the for termination of that debt to have an agreement. Compared to a debt consolidation, it can be between 45 days to 3 months before it gets settled.
And why so long? What makes it take so long?
Well, the way the system is built, when a creditor calls you to have a debt settled, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1, they want 80% of that debt. We know client can't pay that because that's why they're in trouble. They couldn't even pay the minimum at the end of the day. So it goes into phase 2 after 45 days. By law, they have to transfer to another agency to see if they can collect. The second phase is 50%, not 80%. So now you get a little bit more affordable for the client if he can afford it, depending on his finance. And if after 45 days that still didn't go through, and after the agency knows they can't collect, they sell it to a third party now, which is the last resort, and that third party is at 25%. So now it gets more affordable for the client to be able to say, well, you know what, at 25%, I can pay that one. So it's an option. That's when they have that many debt, credit cards, 5, 6, 7, that's when we go into a consumer proposal that will become at 21 cents on the dollar compared to pay 80 cents on the dollar at the start. So
okay, and just in the description that you just gave there, does that mean that some of these different options, from proposals, consolidations, arbitration, bankruptcy, some of them you're still going to get calls from creditors to pay up? Or does all of these things stop those creditors? Wow, who knew there were so many options to help you with your credit issues? Well, obviously Gilbert did, right? So this is a big question right here we're in the middle of answering, and that's how you stop these creditor calls. And Gilbert has the answer waiting for you in part 2. So find a link right below. Click on part 2. Give us just a couple more minutes to talk about the pesky collections calls that you might be getting, hopefully not, but might be, and the rest of the information about your options. See you soon in part 2.